Another safety tip from Martin Safety Solutions today. Today we're going to talk about permits for permit required confined space. Why are they important? Why are they required? Well, OSHA requires under 1910.146 any entry that you make in a permit required confined space, thus the word permit required, that you do indeed require that permit. Now, what are permits? I love permits. You remember when you were back in school, elementary school perhaps, that the teacher would whisper something in Susie's ear over here, and she would tell Susie to turn around, and it would go through the entire class. But when it got over here to Johnny, it was a totally different sentence. You remember that? Well, that's kind of like permits to me a little bit. If I were to tear a sheet of paper out of a book and hand it to you and tell you, go assess a permit required confined space. Each one of you that I gave the sheet of paper, you do a pretty good job because you're fairly trained and knowledgeable on permit required confined space. However, when you came back and gave me all those sheets of paper where you had assessed the permit required confined space, would they all have the same things on them? Probably not. And that's why I like permit required confined spaces, because it's not just a permit, it's an assessment of everything about that confined space. What's on the permit? Well, you have things like the name of the entrant, the name of the attendant, the name of the supervisor, the date of the entry, the time of the entry. Do you have PPE, and is PPE needed? And if so, what type of PPE? Has lockout, tagout happened? And you're checking these things off. And then you have an area where you're testing the atmosphere of that space prior to entry and prior to each entry. And you're going to put, what was that oxygen content at that moment when you tested it prior to the entry? Were there any toxics present, flammables, combustibles, H2S, carbon monoxide, and so forth? And you're going to be recording that down. Now, you may have heard me say each entry, because the entrant might make more than one entry. How could that possibly be? Well, at 9 o'clock, the bell goes off, and there's going to be, he's going to go drink a Coca-Cola. It's break time. And then prior, when he comes back from break, guess what? He can't just walk back in that space. He has to reassess that space and record what the atmosphere does on that permit. And then at 12 o'clock lunchtime, same thing. He goes, he eats his hamburger, he comes back. Guess what? Can't just walk right in the space. He and the attendant, of course, who is with him, they test that space, and then if all is well, he makes re-entry. Other things on the permit, the communication, what's it going to be? Is it verbal? Is it with a radio? And so forth. So a full assessment of the permit required confined space is required. And that permit is what you assess with and what you record it on. That permit is also to be prominently posted by the entry point. Be sure you hit all of these things, these items I'm telling you about. Follow your written confined space program that is site specific for your facility. And that's our safety tip of the day from Martin Safety Solutions. Be safe out there.